This video is going to cover why using a password manager helps create stronger and more secure passwords. Time and time again, we see things such as password reuse, so where people are using the same password across multiple services, as well as using known weak passwords. Year after year, we see the same top 10 list being published of weak passwords. Often the same passwords appear in that list year after year. That's an issue because attackers will use that list to help attempt to access accounts. The other thing is password reuse. Attackers will gain access to a set of credentials via something like a service breach. And then they will attempt to use those credentials across multiple services. And if you're using those same credentials across multiple services, they would then be able to gain access to those services. They do something called credential stuffing, using known good credentials that have been associated with some service, and they'll attempt to log into different services using those credentials. So having a unique, strong password is really important. So unique being a different password per account, and strong, in my opinion, is a lengthy password. So there's a common misconception that a complex password is secure. Complex password being a password that has special characters, digits, uppercase and lowercase. There is an element of truth to that, but that on its own doesn't make for a strong password. A longer password has a much better effect on creating a more secure password. The reason behind this is an attacker has to effectively then brute force the password. So brute force, try every single combination. So start off with A, go to B, C, D, A, B, so on and so forth. And it is technically possible that they'll arrive at the password, but within a short period or appropriate time period, it's not feasible or possible. So you're talking about years, decades, or even longer. So from an attacker point of view, they won't be able to gain access to your password in perhaps even their lifetime. And associated with that, like what I would recommend is using a passphrase. So it makes it easier to remember, and also makes it easier to come up with a longer password. So try something quirky, something that just doesn't make sense. The reason why you want to do that is you prevent something called a dictionary attack. So there's different constructs of the English language or other languages that you can put together to help reduce the number of different combinations that you need to use. So if you create something that really quirky that doesn't make sense, they're likely not going to come across that. So an example would be the key in the sky under a mat or something like that. Just something that just really doesn't make any sense. I also then add special characters, so changing an A to an at, a 3 to an E, or something like that. So password managers also then come in two flavors. You have cloud password managers, so things like 1Password, Bitwarden, Dashlane, LastPass. These services allow you to synchronize passwords across multiple devices. So you would install the application on multiple devices, and then you can access the password on those different devices. This is really useful when you want to access a service. Say, for instance, I don't know, Spotify on your desktop, and then you want to access Spotify on your phone, and even on your tablet. These services allow you to do that. Every time you add a new account, they synchronize across your devices. Every time you update a password, they synchronize across your devices. And it also allows you to securely access your passwords. As you see later, there's a way that it will efficiently allow you to enter your password into a site. There is a concern, and it's a legitimate concern, that if an attacker gains access to your vault or your account that contains all your passwords, that they would be able to gain access to all your accounts. since it contains all your passwords. The likelihood of this is pretty low. One of the reasons being is if you look at these services out there, such as 1Password, the entire business model is built on protecting your passwords, making your passwords secure. If they get breached and the result of that or their product is that your passwords get leaked, that's going to have a significant impact on their business. So from a business perspective, they have every reason to make sure that your passwords are really stored securely. But I get it. There's some people who are still not comfortable with that. So there's another option is using an offline password manager such as KeePass. That stores files locally. Your data is never synced across the device or cloud or their servers. So everything's stored within the confines of a single system. Now, the problem with that is you can't have, or not efficiently have credentials synchronized across devices. So the only real means of doing that is either manually creating on each device or somehow copying that data to different devices. And if you do that, one way is done via a cloud service such as OneDrive or Dropbox. And if you're doing that, I would question why you're doing that over using a cloud-based password service. So diving in, we're going to try out 1Password. This is just a burner account. So I'm just going to create this. Once the video is published, this account's no longer going to exist. But covering off what they offer, the business and teams offering is focused for businesses. Teams is really useful, so you can share passwords across teams efficiently and securely, so you don't have to use things like email to start sending passwords to different team members. If a password's ever updated, it's going to be updated for all those team members. And also controlling access to it. Sometimes people leave our organization or they change roles, so you may want to remove access to those passwords. I'm going to focus on the personal accounts though. So the basic account is geared towards individuals. And then they also have a family account. So if you have multiple family members in the household, you can share passwords with your spouses or partners. And for example, you may want a Netflix account that you want people in your household to be able to access. So you can share that Netflix account with other members of your household. So in this case, we're just going to stick with the individual account. The email address is really important. Make sure this is an email address that you own, that only you have access to. If attackers get access to this email address, they could potentially gain access to your account. In the realms of 1Password, gaining access to your account doesn't necessarily mean they gain access to your passwords. This is because the way 1Password is designed, you have a notion of a vault. So a vault is a storage mechanism where it stores all your passwords, and it's encrypted with a key. You'll see this key later. So gaining access to an account simply gains access to the encrypted vault. So an attacker would get access to this vault, but they won't be able to access your passwords yet. But they can access other things like your personal details. So making sure you protect this is really important. This is a demo, so this is a throwaway service that I'm using. Don't use this. Please don't use this. As I said, use your own email, one that only you have access to, that you have full control over. So once I create this, I go off. So you're going to get a 6-digit code that will come through in the email. Then you're going to enter that in and complete the registration process. So in this case, I'm going to enter that in, enter my personal details. So we're going to call this password manager demo. The master password, so this is the password used to access your account and your encrypted vault. So again, make sure you use a strong password. As the name 1Password suggests, the idea behind it is you only have one password that you need to remember. So make it strong, secure, along all of that good stuff. For this, I'm going to use this service called Strong Random Password Generator. This is a really nifty feature or service that you can just use to create passwords on the fly. As you can see, there's different attributes that you can add to them. But yeah, I just used that to create this. Probably here, what you want for your master password is the passphrase, a nice, really random, quirky passphrase, maybe letter with some special characters in there. Credit card details if you want to actually use the service and skip the trial, but for now we're just going to get past that. Now, once your account's created, it's going to generate a PDF. Download this, print it off, and then delete this PDF from your system. It's really important that you delete this PDF from your system because this contains details about your account. Now, there's a reason why you want this. If you lose this information, you can't access your account. You may be able to access your account via like a password reset, but you won't be able to access the contents of your encrypted vault. They are encrypted with a secret key. So you lose access to this, you don't gain access to your vaults. And the vaults are what store passwords and other secrets. So it's really important that you have this. The only way of gaining access to that information, or you can't gain access to that information, and the only way of gaining access to your account again is effectively wiping it clean. So you'd lose all your passwords and any other data stored in your account. So that's great, but also making sure people don't have access to this that shouldn't have access to this. Because if you have access to this, you have access to all your information on your account. So it's really important that you protect this. So that's why I said download it, print it out, fill in your master password, store it in a secure location, such as a locked drawer, even better, a safe, and then delete the file from your computer. So coming in, you have essentially your vaults. So this is a personal vault. You can create different types of vaults. So a vault is a collection of secrets that you want to have. So you might have servers. You can create a vault that's just passwords and secrets related to servers, personal, entirely up to you. As I said, you can store other information. So login is login credentials. You may just have a password on its own, not associated with a site that you log in. Could be a decryption key or something like that. Documents, passports, wireless routers, really useful. So you can create strong wireless keys. And then you can have that synced across multiple devices. So it's a easier way of getting those passwords onto those devices when you're trying to connect to a wireless setup. Diving into the login. So you have a username, password. The website's really important, so you'll see this in a bit. This associates these login credentials with this site, more importantly, the URL. And this is really helpful from a phishing point of view. You'll see in a bit how this helps. But yeah, it's just for now, it's worth noting that this ties to that URL. And then you don't just have to have passwords, you can have other information associated with this. So in this case, the decryption key for your encrypted vault. While we're on that, we have the 1Password desktop app. So you can download this and install it from their website. And this is something I would recommend. The 1Password app is really useful, so you don't have to go to the site all the time to interact with your vault. Now, if you have an instance already set up on your mobile, you can do something like scan the QR code or log you in without having to enter in all this other information. But since we don't have it, we're going to have to enter it in. I'll leave that blank because it's just using the default one, the master password, and the secret key. So in order to gain access, you have to have the secret key and master password. And away you go. So you sign in. So that will sync up, pull down the vault. So all my accounts are now available. you'll see this thing, Watchtower. Now, this is really important as well. This helps you monitor different aspects of your passwords. So going through the list, compromised websites. You want to know if a site's been compromised. The reason being is if a site's compromised, you want to change your password as soon as that happens. So that's kind of a notification that can help you identify when you need to change passwords. Vulnerable passwords, I highly recommend you enable this. So this makes use of a service called Have I Been Pwned. It doesn't actually send your raw password to it. It sends a mathematical model of your password to it, and it compares it to known passwords that have been leaked via a breach. Really important, because if you have a password that is known leaked already, that's likely in some list somewhere that attackers are then using to try access accounts. So you want to change those passwords with a sense of urgency. Reuse passwords, already mentioned this. You want to have unique passwords per services, so this will help you identify any passwords that have been used across multiple services. Weak passwords, as I mentioned before, having nice strong passwords makes it more difficult for attackers to gain access to your accounts. Unsecured websites, so whenever you're logging into a site, you always want to make sure that you're doing it over HTTPS. This ensures that the connection is encrypted, so attackers can't sniff your credentials from the traffic. And then two-factor authentication. Again, I recommend enabling this. So this allows, or two-factor authentication is an additional security mechanism on accounts. So you'd have two forms of authentication that you need to provide in order to successfully authenticate to a site or service. And this is typically a password and some sort of token sent via text message or SMS, or a app with a time generated token. And while I'm on that, you want to go to, in your 1Password account, you want to go to My Profile and go to More Actions and Manage Two-Factor Authentication. Please set this up. This is really important. The idea behind this is if ever attackers manage to compromise your email and somehow being able to reset your password or even gain access to your password, they would still need to get past this security barrier in order to gain access to your vaults and your other personal information. So it's really important that you set this up. So expiring, this is, you can set passwords to expire. The general gist of it now is you should only really change passwords if there's reason to believe that that password's been compromised. So it's either, that's why you want to monitor for compromised websites. So you can add a new login. So new login. I'm going to create one for Google. I already created this account prior to this video. So I'm going to add this in. So we're going to create Google. Username is going to be the email address and the password. So I'm going to paste in the password, but this is where you can have really strong, unique passwords generated by the tool. So you'll see here, you can have a password list. So passphrase, essentially, you can have different separators and all that kind of stuff, and you can make it really nice and long. But I typically stick to characters, have digits and symbols. The reason being is, I know I said complex passwords don't always make it more secure, but if you combine that with a long password, that is a really secure password. So combining those two makes them really secure. And as you'll see in a bit, there's no need for you to ever know what this password is. The tool will do most of the work for you. So it makes no difference if this password is, to me, when I'm using this password, it makes no difference if it's 10 characters, 25 characters, or 64 characters. I'm always going to follow the same process. So from my perspective, I want it as long as I can possibly make it, because that means it's a lot more secure. And then lastly, the site that you want to associate this with. So we're going to associate it with Google. And this is the URL that you use to log into Google with. And this is really important because this is going to help from a phishing perspective. So you say that it does nice little things like adds a nice icon. so you can associate this account with Google. So we've done that. Now let's see how it actually works in action. So typically you would copy it, or as you saw earlier, you can copy it or type it in, but why would you want to do that? This is where the extension comes in. So this extension, and this is why I recommend getting into this habit, this extension will associate this URL with any of the accounts that you have associated with that URL. And this is going to be really helpful from a phishing perspective, because these tools are really good at matching URLs, whereas human eyes aren't, and attackers are good and really sophisticated in clever ways of trying to create deceptive URLs that look almost identical to the real thing. So if you click on that, it's going to fill that in. And again, with the password, I'm going to make sure I didn't use the password, so I'm going to save the password that I had. Don't worry, I am deleting this account before this video goes out, so that those credentials will no longer be valid once this video is out. And you see I'm in. Now, the real power, as I mentioned, is the phishing side. So what I'm going to do now is come to a site that I created locally. Now, this is only accessible on my network, but what I'm trying to do here is mimic what a phishing attempt would be like. So I've created a fake Google login page. So if I come to my password manager, you see it now no longer suggests any passwords. And this should immediately set up alarm bells, because this is a Google site, well, quote, Google site, but there's no accounts associated with it. And that's where you go and have a further look at things like the URL, and you figure out it's a phishing site. And that's helped prevent me from entering my credentials, because attackers will set up sites like this. So you'd enter in your credentials, they would gain access to your credentials, that you then use that to access your account. So that's how a password manager really helps with helping prevent against things like phishing attempts. And yeah, I mean, that's it. Password managers are really, really useful. There are many concerns from others around password managers, such as the ones I've touched on, gaining access to vaults and that. I will say this, to date, as far as I'm aware, there's been no known breach of any of the password managers. Yes, there's been security incidents where attackers have managed to access accounts, but that's only accounts, the kind of fluffy data around those accounts. So people's email addresses and names and that, but not the actual passwords, not the actual content within the password manager. So not actually this kind of stuff. And we've seen countless incidences of password reuse and that resulting in people's accounts being breached and that. But yeah, I stand by password managers. I've been using them for years. I couldn't function without them. I have hundreds of accounts. There's no way I could ever try and manage those via any other means. And I don't see passwords going away anytime soon. So this is probably the best that we have at the moment. But yeah, hopefully this video has been helpful in helping those, especially not well versed in this, get a taste of what password managers are about.